Jai Gurudev, today we are here with an art of living expert and an officer of the Vedic Dharma Sansthan to discuss the relevance of lessons from 1984 by George Orwell and how these lessons can be applied to practices within the art of living. Specifically, we want to explore how these teachings can help in staying committed to sadhana, seva, satsang, sudarshan, kriya, pranayama, meditation, upanayam, gayatri japa, agnikaryam, padma sadhana, trikal sandhya, and leading or organizing art of living programs and satsangs by doing seva. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Jai Gurudev, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. The wisdom from 1984 is strikingly relevant when applied to spiritual growth and how we organize our seva and satsangs. Wonderful. Let's begin with the first lesson from 1984. Firstly, totalitarianism crushes individuality. How do you see this reflected in our journey of spiritual practices? Jai Gurudev, yes, totalitarian regimes, as depicted in 1984, aim to suppress individual freedom and thought in spiritual life when we are disconnected from ourselves, when we allow external pressures or fears to govern our actions. We are, in a sense, living under a personal totalitarian rule. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya, Padma Sadhana, and meditation help us break free from that internal suppression. They reconnect us with our inner self, restoring individuality and inner freedom. Through sadhana, we reclaim our thoughts and emotions from being influenced by external chaos. Exactly, in Agni Karyam or Sandhya Vandanam, for example, the act of daily rituals restores balance within us. It allows us to move beyond the distractions and confusions of the outer world, much like how Orwell warns us against being trapped by an external oppressive force. These rituals guide us toward our own divinity, reinforcing individual strength in spiritual life. That's insightful. The next key lesson is about language shaping thought, particularly through Newspeak in the book. How does the art of living approach language and thoughts in spiritual practice? The power of mantra chanting like Gayatri Japa can be seen as the opposite of Newspeak. In Orwell's world, language is reduced to control thought, but in art of living, we use powerful mantras to expand the mind. Chanting mantras refines our consciousness, elevates our thoughts, and purifies the mind. The language of the divine, whether through japa or the words used in satsang, opens up infinite possibilities for spiritual growth. Yes, and satsang itself is a powerful tool to shape collective consciousness. It's like using the power of sacred words to build resilience against negativity. In 1984, language was used for oppression, but through satsang and mantra chanting, we uplift and energize the mind, helping participants rise above ignorance and mundane thinking. That is fascinating. In 1984, we see that historical revisionism manipulates the truth. How can this lesson apply to spiritual practices? History manipulation in 1984 serves to control the present. Similarly, our own mental patterns often distort our memories and the truth of who we are. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya and meditation help cleanse these impressions. Through regular practice, we stop revising our personal history based on fear or ego and instead begin seeing reality as it is. We live in the present, not burdened by the distorted past. The ancient rituals like Upanayam and Trikal Sandhya emphasize timeless truths. They connect us to the eternal, ensuring that the wisdom of the past is preserved in its pure form. Instead of revising history to fit our convenience, these practices reinforce eternal dharmic principles, grounding us in the reality of spiritual knowledge and making us more effective in seva work. Speaking of seva, another lesson from 1984 is that constant surveillance breeds fear. How does this relate to commitment in seva and sadhana? Fear and constant surveillance, as seen in Orwell's dystopia, destroy the spontaneity and joy in actions. When we do seva or engage in spiritual practice out of fear or societal pressure, it doesn't bring the same growth. However, through sadhana, we are freed from fear when we commit to seva with joy and purpose without worrying about who is watching or expecting praise. We experience the true bliss of serving selflessly. So Darshan Kriya helps release these internalized fears, making seva a joyful offering rather than an obligation. That's true in Ayurveda too. Health is maintained when we live without stress and fear, just like Orwell's surveillance. Fear can be a toxin in the body and mind. Our spiritual practices like Agni Karyam and Gayatri Japa dissolve these toxins, allowing us to function from a space of freedom and commitment to Dharma. When one teaches and organizes art of living courses, this inner freedom is what allows us to serve fully and authentically. So, how do practices like Sudarshan Kriya and Padma Sadhana help combat the effect of lessons like constant fear of punishment, discouraging rebellion from 1984? Sudarshan Kriya and Padma Sadhana are incredibly transformative. They help break the pattern of fear and hesitation that keeps us from stepping into our full potential. In 1984, people avoid rebellion due to fear, but in spiritual life, this fear can manifest as self doubt, hesitation in stepping into leadership roles, or taking initiative. Regular practice of these techniques not only makes one resilient, but also gives the inner strength to lead, teach, and organized seva and satsang without fear. Through Upanayana and daily Trikal Sandhya, we are reminded of our higher purpose behind the material world. These ancient practices fill us with spiritual courage, so we no longer fear external consequences but act from a place of inner strength and dharma. This is essential for anyone taking up leadership roles and organizing spiritual programs or guiding others in their practices. Many characters in 1984 succumb to double think or believing two contradictory ideas at once. How can spiritual practices help in staying clear minded? Spiritual practices such as pranayama, sudarshan kriya, and meditation strengthen clarity of mind. Doublethink is the result of mental confusion where one loses track of truth. These practices cleanse mental impurities and bring about clarity, allowing us to live in alignment with our values. It becomes easier to discern what is true and false, and we are less likely to be swayed by external contradictions. I agree, regular practice of Gayatri Japa and Sandhya Vandanam helps maintain mental purity and clarity. In our daily rituals, we reinforce the connection to the divine and the eternal truths of Dharma, making it impossible for us to fall into the trap of double-think or confusion in the spiritual journey. One last point: in 1984, hope is an illusion in a totalitarian state. How does hope manifest in spiritual practice? Hope is central to spiritual practice where totalitarian systems erase hope. Practices like satsang, sudarshan kriya, and meditation nurture and cultivate it. Each breath, each chant, and each act of seva fills us with renewed hope and a deeper connection to the divine. It's not blind hope, but a hope grounded in inner experience and resilience. Even in moments of personal difficulty, we have the tools to remain hopeful and connected to our purpose. Indeed, Gayatri Japa and Agni Karyam are also practices that continuously invoke hope. They remind us of our connection to universal energies and our role in the greater cosmic order. In seva work, whether teaching, organizing, or leading satsangs, this hope becomes a source of inner strength. It ensures that we stay committed to the greater good no matter the external circumstances. Thank you both for these profound insights. It's clear that the lessons from 1984 can guide us in deepening our commitment to sadhana, seva, and satsang. Through these practices, we remain resilient, clear minded, and full of hope, able to lead and serve in our communities with authenticity and joy. Thank you, and Jai Gurudev. Jagadev, let's continue with some new perspectives. One of the themes from 1984 is how propaganda controls the mind. How can this lesson help us understand the importance of clarity in spiritual teachings such as those in Art of Living and how it applies to our practices like Sudarshan Kriya meditation and satsang? Yes, propaganda controls the mind by overwhelming it with false information, leading people away from truth. In a similar way, our minds can be overwhelmed by negativity, doubt, and external pressures. In daily life, satsang acts as a remedy to this mental bombardment. In satsang, we come together to sing, chant, and share wisdom, reinforcing the truth of who we are. The collective energy of satsang cuts through the propaganda of our own minds, helping us reconnect with clarity. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya further detoxify the mind, allowing us to see reality clearly. Exactly, the Gayatri Mantra, a key part of Upanayana and Trikal Sandhya, is a perfect example. Chanting this ancient mantra invokes clarity and purity in the mind. It's like an antidote to all the misinformation and confusion that can cloud our consciousness. When we engage in practices like Padma Sadhana and daily rituals such as Agni Karyam, we are protecting ourselves from the propaganda of the material world and attuning ourselves to the higher spiritual truth. That makes a lot of sense. In 1984, memory manipulation is also a key control mechanism. How can spiritual practices help us deal with the distortions our mind creates in our memories, and what role does Seva play in healing this? Our memories are often colored by emotions and past experiences, which can distort the truth and affect our present actions. Sudarshan Kriya and meditation are powerful because they work on a subtle level to clear these mental impressions or samskaras that distort memory and perception. Through these practices, we are able to heal from past traumas and see things as they truly are. Seva or selfless service is also key here because when we engage in service, we step out of the narrative of our own mind. By focusing on others, we release the grip of distorted memories and connect with the present moment. In the Vedic tradition, practices like Agni Karyam and Sandhya Vandanam purify not just the body and mind, but also our subtle energy channels. This purification helps us break free from the influence of distorted memories. Gayatri Japa, in particular, is known to cleanse the mind and bring forth clarity. When you combine spiritual practices with seva, you essentially align yourself with the flow of life, where the past no longer weighs you down, the distorted memories lose their power, and you function with clarity and purpose. That's really profound. Another lesson from 1984 is how isolation breeds disconnection. Can you talk about the importance of community in Art of Living and how practices like satsang and group seva foster connection? Yes, isolation, as shown in 1984, leads to despair, helplessness, and a loss of individuality. In spiritual life, isolation from the Sangha or spiritual community can lead to similar effects, feeling disconnected from the divine and from one's purpose. Satsang is the glue that binds us to our spiritual family and to our higher self. When we gather in satsang, we strengthen our spiritual practices and uplift one another. Seva is another powerful way to stay connected. By serving others, we not only help them but also dissolve our own sense of separation and isolation. We realize that we are all part of a larger whole. In the Vedic tradition, the concept of Sangha or community is essential. Upanayana initiates one into a larger spiritual community where you are constantly supported by the shared wisdom and practices of that group. Sandhya Vandanam, when done in a group, amplifies the energy of the practice and strengthens communal bond. Likewise, rituals like Agni Karyam are often performed collectively, reinforcing the idea that spiritual growth is not an individual journey but a collective one. Whether you are organizing or leading a course, community involvement is essential for sustained spiritual growth. Isolation and community are certainly powerful themes. In 1984, truth becomes malleable under totalitarian rule. How do we ensure that we stay aligned with spiritual truths, especially in the face of doubt or distraction? In the world of 1984, truth is constantly manipulated, but in spiritual practice, truth is constant. It's eternal. What's important is keeping ourselves aligned with that truth, and that's where sadhana or spiritual practice comes in. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya, Pranayama, and meditation help remove the layers of doubt and confusion that cloud our inner perception of truth. Seva, when done selflessly, also helps because it keeps us anchored in the reality of our interconnectedness. The moment we serve without expectation, we are aligning with spiritual truth. Yes, and in the Vedic framework, rituals like Agni Karyam and Gayatri Japa are tools to keep our minds and souls aligned with the eternal Dharma. These rituals have been practiced for millennia because they connect us to timeless truths. The challenge in modern times, as in 1984, is that distractions and false narratives can pull us away from this alignment. But through consistent practice of Trikal Sandhya, Upanayanam, Padma Sadhana, we stay grounded in the truth. The teachings of Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji always remind us that truth is simple and it is our mental complexities that obscure it. Another theme from 1984 is how resistance, though difficult, is necessary for change. How does Art of Living's focus on Seva, Sadhana, and Satsang help in creating this kind of resistance against negative patterns, both individually and in society? Resistance in the context of art of living is not about fighting external forces, but about overcoming internal resistance, our own mental patterns, conditioning, and negativity. Through regular sadhana, whether it's Sudarshan, Kriya, meditation, or pranayama, we strengthen our inner resolve to stay positive and peaceful even when faced with challenges. Seva is another form of resistance, but instead of resisting something, it's about creating something positive in the world. When you organize or lead art of living courses or satsangs or programs, you are creating a space for transformation both for yourself and for others. In Vedic tradition, the idea of inner resistance is central to Dharma. Agni Karya, for example, symbolizes the burning away of impurities. It is an act of resistance against the forces of ignorance and negativity. Gayatri Japa similarly strengthens the mind and spirit to resist temptations or distractions from the spiritual path. These practices equip us to lead a life of dharma, ensuring that we not only resist negative forces in our own lives, but also inspire change in society through our actions. When we organize and lead spiritual programs, we are part of this large resistance, creating a ripple effect of positivity and transformation. One last point before we close. 1984 highlights the importance of emotional resilience in the face of control. How can spiritual practices help us develop emotional resilience, especially for those involved in organizing or teaching courses? Emotional resilience is key, especially in the face of stress, pressure, or even betrayal. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya, Padma Sadhana, and meditation work directly on the nervous system, helping us release accumulated stress and build emotional strength. When we are grounded in our spiritual practice, we are better equipped to handle the challenges that come our way, whether it's organizing a large program or facing personal difficulties. The calm and strength we gain through regular practice give us the resilience to face anything. In Vedic traditions, rituals like Agni Karyam and daily Sandhya Vandanam build resilience over time. These practices create a strong foundation, ensuring that no matter what external forces are at play, we remain anchored in our inner strength and peace. Gayatri Japa enhances this resilience, protecting the mind from emotional turbulence for those leading or teaching. These practices provide the inner fortitude needed to serve others with compassion, clarity, and calmness, even in the most challenging situations. Thank you both for these enlightening insights. It's clear that the lessons from 1984 can be deeply applied to our spiritual journey, helping us stay committed to sadhana, seva, and satsang. Through these practices, we build resilience, clarity, and connection both individually and as a community. Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev, and thank you for those wonderful insights. Let's continue with a few more lessons. One of the profound lessons from 1984 is the idea of internalized surveillance, how individuals start policing their own thoughts and actions out of fear. In a spiritual context, many of us experience self doubt, guilt, or fear of judgment. How can art of living practices help overcome this internalized pressure? That's an important point. In 1984, internalized surveillance makes people suppress their true nature. Spirituality, we do the same when we let negative emotions like guilt or fear cloud our mind. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya and meditation are specifically designed to release these accumulated stresses. When we do Sudarshan Kriya, we are clearing the unnecessary chatter in our mind, those thoughts and fears, and reconnecting with our authentic self. This process helps us free ourselves from internal policing and be in a natural state of joy and peace. Over time, it becomes easier to trust ourselves and others, making us more open in service, satsang, and teaching. This is closely related to the Vedic concept of Atma Shuddhi, purification of the soul. Rituals like Upanayanam and Agni Karyam help cleanse the mind and body of guilt, fear, and any form of internalized control. Gayatri Japa is also powerful because it works to purify not just the intellect, but also the deeper levels of consciousness. As we align ourselves with our dharma, the fear of judgment or doubt naturally dissipates. When we combine these spiritual practices with seva, the emphasis shifts from self judgment to selfless service, creating an open hearted approach to life. That's fascinating. Another theme in 1984 is the power of language to shape thought. How words and language can limit or expand a perception of reality. In Art of Living, mantras and chanting are central to practice. How does this connect with the idea that language shapes our experience? Yes, language plays a critical role in shaping our mental state. In 1984, language is manipulated to limit thought, while in spiritual practices, we use language through mantras, chanting, and satsang to elevate our consciousness. Chanting mantras like Om Namah Shivaya or the Gayatri Mantra aligns our mind with positive vibrations and expands our awareness. These sacred sounds carry the essence of truth and purity, and their repetition clears the mental fog, allowing us to perceive reality as it is. If the complete opposite of that happens, what happens in 1984, where language is used to create mental constraints in the spiritual realm, the right use of language opens the mind and heart. In Vedic traditions, mantras are considered to be the sound embodiment of cosmic energy. When we chant mantras like Gayatri Japa or participate in satsang, we are engaging in a form of Nada Yoga, the yoga of sound. This is a way to harness the power of language to transcend ordinary perception and connect with the deeper truths. Each mantra carries a specific vibration that influences not just the mind but also the subtle energy body. Practices like Agni Karyam are also accompanied by Vedic chants, which further enhance the ritual's transformative effect on the individual and the environment. That's really powerful. Another critical theme in 1984 is the loss of individual identity in a collectivist regime where people become cogs in the machine. How does seva as a collective practice differ from this concept, and how do we maintain our individuality while engaging in group service and satsang? The difference is in the consciousness behind the action. In a regime or regime like the one in 1984, the collective is used to suppress individuality and personal freedom. In Seva, however, the collective work uplifts both the individual and the group. You are not losing your individuality, rather, you are expanding your sense of self to include others. Seva is not about erasing personal identity, but about dissolving the ego, which is different. Through Seva, you experience a higher sense of purpose and fulfillment, which actually enhances your individuality in a spiritual sense. In satsang, the collective energy uplifts each individual's unique expression. The songs we sing in the satsang and the wisdom we share only amplify that individuality within the larger collective harmony. In the Vedic tradition, the balance between the individual and the collective is well understood. Practices like Trikal, Sandhya, and Agni Karyam are collective, but they serve to enhance the individual's connection to the divine. In Gayatri Japa, for example, each person is chanting for their own purification, but the collective chanting amplifies the power of the mantra. It's like each person's flame contributing to a larger fire. The individuality isn't lost, it's nourished and supported by the collective practice. This is a very different approach from the collectivism of a regime where the individual is merely a tool. In spiritual practice, the individual and the collective grow together. A recurring element in 1984 is the erasure of history, how control over the past manipulates the present, how important is history, tradition, and lineage in spiritual practice, especially in art of living and Vedic traditions. Yes, in 1984, the erasure of history is used as a tool to control the present, but in spiritual traditions, history and lineage are our anchors. They provide us with the wisdom of the ages, guiding us in the present moment. In Art of Living, we honor the lineage of ancient wisdom that has been passed on through the ages. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya, Padmasadhana, and even Seva are all rooted in ancient traditions that have stood the test of time. By staying connected to these traditions, we not only enrich our own spiritual journey, but also ensure that the wisdom continues to benefit future generations. Absolutely. In Vedic culture, lineage is of paramount importance. The knowledge we practice today, whether it's Upanayam, Sandhya Vandanam, or Gayatri Japa, has been passed on through the unbroken chain of teachers and practitioners. This continuity is what gives the practices their power. The idea is that by aligning with these timeless traditions, we are connecting with the wisdom of all those who have practiced before us. Erasing history, as in 1984, weakens the individual and the collective, but honoring it strengthens both. When we perform rituals like Agni Karyam, we are connecting not only with the present moment but also with the deep spiritual history that underpins the ritual. That's truly enlightening. One final point from 1984 I would like to explore is the concept of hope in the face of oppression. In the book, hope is nearly crushed, but there are always seeds of resistance. In the spiritual journey, we often face obstacles or moments of despair. How do the practices of Art of Living help sustain hope both on an individual and societal level? Yes, so hope is inherent in spiritual practice and art of living. We recognize that life has its ups and downs, but through regular sadhana, Sudarshan Kriya, and Seva, we cultivate resilience. The breath work in Sudarshan Kriya helps clear emotional blocks, allowing us to reconnect with a sense of joy and hope even in difficult times. When we engage in Seva, we see that our actions are contributing to something larger than ourselves, which fosters hope in a broader sense. Satsang, too, is a powerful tool. It uplifts the spirit and reminds us that we are never alone in this journey. The Vedic perspective echoes this. Hope is sustained through practice, tradition, and connection to the divine rituals like Gayatri Japa, Agnikaram, and Trikal Sandhya are practices that invoke hope because they align us with cosmic forces of positivity and light. Even in times of personal struggle, these practices act as a beacon, guiding us back to balance. The resilience that comes from daily spiritual practice ensures that no matter what challenges we face, hope remains alive. When we engage in seva, we also plant seeds of hope for others, creating a ripple effect that benefits society as a whole. It's heartening to see how these spiritual practices can provide us with tools to navigate challenges, cultivate resilience, and foster hope not just for ourselves but for the collective. Thank you for this insightful discussion and for showing how the lessons from 1984 can be applied to deepen our commitment to spiritual growth and service. Jai Gurudev, and thank you very much. Jai Gurudev, and thank you once again for those insightful answers. Let's continue delving deeper into the connection between the themes from 1984 and the spiritual practices of art of living and Vedic traditions. One of the ideas that strikes me from the novel is the importance of personal responsibility, which is often obliterated by the party in 1984. How does personal responsibility play a role in spiritual growth and practices such as Seva, Sudarshan Kriya, and Satsang? Yes, personal responsibility is crucial in any spiritual practice. In 1984, personal responsibility is taken away from the individual, leaving them powerless. But in Art of Living, we emphasize that each person has a role in their own growth and in the well being of society. Through Seva, for example, we learn that our actions matter, whether it's organizing a course or leading a satsang. Taking responsibility builds character, resilience, and leadership. In Sudarshan Kriya, we take responsibility for our emotional and mental health. We are not waiting for someone else to fix our problems. Instead, we use the tools given to us, like pranayama and meditation, to bring ourselves into balance. Exactly, personal responsibility is also a core element of Sanatana Dharma. Practices like Upanayanam, Sandhya Vandanam, and Gayatri Japa are all about taking responsibility for your spiritual progress. The Trikal Sandhya performed at dawn, noon, and dusk is an example of personal accountability. It's a daily commitment to aligning yourself with cosmic forces, ensuring that your thoughts, words, and actions remain pure. In doing these practices, you not only take responsibility for your own growth but also contribute to the upliftment of society. That's a great point. Another strong theme in 1984 is the idea of constant change of reality, where the party controls and rewrites history and truth. How do spiritual practices help ground individuals in a consistent truth, especially when society can often be confusing or unstable? This is where spiritual practices become invaluable. In 1984, truth is constantly shifting, creating instability and fear. But when you engage in practices like Sudarshan Kriya or Padma Sadhana, you experience a constant inner truth that doesn't change. The breath, the mind, and the body are all interconnected, and through these practices, you get anchored in the present moment where truth resides. No matter how chaotic the world outside may seem, meditation helps you stay centered and grounded in the reality of who we are beyond societal conditioning or external confusion. Yes, and this is precisely why the Vedic rituals like Agni Karyam and Gayatri Japa have been preserved for millennia. They connect us to the cosmic unchanging truth. These practices are rooted in eternal principles of Dharma, which don't change with time or external circumstances. When we chant the Gayatri Mantra, for instance, we are invoking the truth of the universal consciousness. These practices are designed to keep us aligned with the cosmic order no matter what is happening around us. They offer a steady foundation of truth and righteousness, Satya and Dharma, in a world that can often feel unstable. That's a reassuring thought. In today's fast changing world, another lesson from 1984 is the fear of individuality, where unique thoughts or actions are punished. How do spiritual practices in art of living and Vedic traditions help encourage individuals' expression while maintaining a connection to the collective? Yes, spiritual practices celebrate individuality. In art of living, we recognize that every person is unique with their own strengths and talents. Satsang, for instance, is a beautiful way of expressing individuality while being part of the collective. Whether you are leading a bhajan, organizing an event, or simply participating, your individual energy contributes to the collective harmony. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya helps you release societal conditioning that often suppresses individuality. You begin to express yourself freely without fear because you have tapped into your true self, one that is beyond external judgments. Seva too is an expression of individuality where each person brings their unique skills to the table in service for others. In Vedic culture, individuality and the collective are seen as complementary in practices like Upanayam. The initiation into spiritual knowledge, you are guided toward discovering your unique path while remaining connected to the larger tradition. Sandhya Vandanam is an individual practice that you perform as part of a larger universal rhythm. The Vedic rituals are designed to awaken the individual's potential while maintaining harmony with the collective. Even in Agni Karyam, the fire represents both individual purification and a collective offering to the divine. This balance is the essence of Dharma, finding your unique role while contributing to the greater good. That balance between individual growth and collective well-being is crucial. Another profound lesson from 1984 is the destruction of love and trust by the party. How can practices like Sudarshan Kriya, Satsang, and Gayatri Japa help rebuild love, trust, and connection within families, communities, and society at large? Yes, one of the key objectives of satsang is to bring people together in love and harmony. When we sing, chant, and meditate together, it creates a field of positivity that strengthens bond. Sudarshan Kriya helps by clearing the emotional baggage that often prevents us from trusting or loving fully. When we are free from stress, we naturally feel more connected and loving toward others. This is why satsang is such a powerful tool. It not only uplifts the individual but also the entire community. A regular spiritual practice creates an environment where love and trust can thrive. In Vedic traditions, rituals like Agni Karyam and Sandhya Vandanam have a similar effect. The act of making offerings to the fire is symbolic of offering one's ego, anger, and resentment, which clears the path for love and trust to flourish. The Gayatri Mantra invokes the divine light to guide our intellect, helping us make decisions that are rooted in love and trust. When these practices are done in the family or community setting, they help reinforce the bonds between individuals. This is how Vedic principles and practices help foster unity and harmony within families and society. It is fascinating how these practices promote both inner and outer harmony. Lastly, in 1984, the concept of resistance against oppression plays a crucial role. In our spiritual journey, resistance might take the form of overcoming internal obstacles, doubt, or societal pressures. How do the teachings of art of living and Vedic traditions empower individuals to resist these inner and outer obstacles? Resistance in the spiritual context is about standing firm in the face of negativity, whether it comes from within or outside. Sudarshan Kriya builds inner strength by helping us release the stress, doubt, and fear. When your mind is clear, you can face challenges with more confidence and resilience. The teachings of His Holiness Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji emphasize that we are much stronger than we think. Seva also strengthens this resilience because it shifts the focus from personal struggles to collective well-being. When you serve others, you transcend your own limitations, and this is the greatest form of resistance to negativity. In Vedic traditions, the resistance to negativity is symbolized in rituals like Agni Karyam, where the fire consumes the obstacles to spiritual growth. Gayatri Japa strengthens the intellect and gives us the clarity to overcome ignorance and doubt. Practices like Upanayana prepare the individual for a life of spiritual discipline and resilience. The Trikal Sandhya, performed 3 times a day, serves as a daily reminder to stay aligned with Dharma, resisting the pull of negative tendencies. In both art of living and Vedic practices, spiritual growth is seen as an act of resistance against the forces of ignorance and negativity. Yes, Jai Gurudev, this conversation has beautifully illustrated how the themes from 1984 can be applied to enhance our understanding of spiritual practices and their relevance in today's world. It's clear that through tools like Sudarshan Kriya, Satsang Seva, and the various Vedic rituals, individuals can cultivate resilience, love, responsibility, and truth in their lives. Thank you both for sharing your wisdom, Jai Gurudev, and thank you very much.